To welcome everyone to the second meeting of the Senate Standing Committee on Families. And I would ask everyone to please silence your phone. The Secretary would please call the roll.
Senator Deneen. Senator Funky Fromeyer. Senator Girdler. Senator Herron. Senator Meredith. Senator Mills. Senator Thomas. Senator Webb. Senator Williams. Vice Chair Mays Bledsoe. Present. Chairman Carroll.
Here. We do have a quorum and are duly authorized to conduct business. Does anyone have a guest that they would like to recognize before we move forward? Senator Funky Fromeyer.
Yes, today I have with me a junior legislator in the making, a sophomore in high school, Grace Fromeyer, my youngest daughter. You can
Welcome.
Stand up, Grace.
Everyone, please make her feel welcome.
Mr. Chairman, you can introduce yourself for the record and have any guests, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Danny Carroll. I'm the state senator from the 2nd District. And it is an honor to be here this morning to present Senate Bill 191. This bill is basically a new concept, a new focus in the area of early childhood education. And this is an act relating to the Kentucky Kindergarten Readiness Performance-Based Child Care Incentive Pilot Program. And I do want to stress that this is a pilot program. The University of Kentucky College of Education has agreed to take this on as a project, and they are excited about this project, and it will encompass a 3-year period where we will assess the contents of this bill and check out the proof of concept to see if it is a viable concept. Basically, what the bill does for child care providers, and these are child care centers, child care homes, and also for low-income families, those families that would be eligible for child care assistance. And when these children get to kindergarten, there is an assessment that is performed on these kids, and if the child is determined to be kindergarten ready, then there would be a $2,000 cash reward that would go to the child care provider. This covers the previous 2 years of care for that child. If they were in a child care center for the age 3, age 4, the money would go to the center. If they were at home during that time with their family, then the money would go to that family or a family child care home, same thing. With the families, there would be, in the bill, there would be provisions that there would be resources provided for these families to help them prepare the child, looking at the programs like the HANDS program that go into the homes and work with families. So there would be resources there. There would also be resources within the child care centers themselves and the homes. The current staff with Child Care Aware, other groups that are used to provide support within the centers would be utilized to help with preparing the children with the curriculum within the centers for the service providers to help in that area and to be a support for those folks. The things that the provisions of this and what I feel like what advantage that this structure would bring is in a few different areas. I feel like this would lead to the expansion of services across the state, which is crucial right now for workforce issues within the state. We all know the impact that during COVID when our centers closed down. And right now we are remaining pretty much status quo with the number of providers throughout the state. We're not losing, we're not gaining. because this funding would actually go to any provider. Under the current model, under the Kentucky All-Stars model, you get an appropriation, you get a certain allotment based on how many stars that you have. And that's with 2, 3, 4, and 5, with the 5-star getting the most. And it's also related to the number of child care assistance kids within your center. Spoke with a group this morning, and some centers, because of their ratios, they really don't, it's really not advantageous to them because they don't have enough kids that are on child care assistance to maximize the award. Kentucky All-Stars is a one-time, every 3 years assessment where they come into the center for one day. They look at a limited number of classrooms. They look at policies, all the aspects that are graded under stars, and then you get your ranking. For the out years, until the assessment comes around again on the third year, you simply send in paperwork. In between times of assessments within that 3-year period, oftentimes those standards are not maintained. There are a lot of materials that you have to purchase as part of the All-Stars program, and I can tell you from experience that a lot of time those materials disappear, and then on that third year you're buying everything again. So there is a significant investment to prepare for stars to maximize the number of stars that you get. But again, it's one time every 3 years. And we have heard time and time again how important kindergarten readiness is for our children. We know that we have about a 50% kindergarten readiness rate in the Commonwealth, a little bit higher, around 60 for those kids that go to child care centers. We also know the achievement gaps that occur from kindergarten to third grade. And, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, didn't know if I was being attacked or something there. And we know that if kids aren't reading by grade 3, we know all the bad data that follows that as far as predictors on adulthood and success in life. And the one area that we do not invest in significantly, I think, is the most important area, and that's early childhood education. If we can get a strong foundation and we can get 80, 90% of our kids kindergarten ready, imagine the progress and the success we can have in those first 3 years and beyond if teachers can focus on moving the kids forward instead of trying to get kids caught up who are not kindergarten ready. So that's a big emphasis of this bill, providing incentives to low-income parents. I think over past years, we've had a lot of members that were reluctant to fund child care because they didn't want to subsidize private businesses. And I've heard that from many members in both chambers. This spreads the funding out into for parents also to have access to that. And it would provide incentives for them to prepare their kids. And again, we would provide materials for them. We talked about how this would, more kids would come in kindergarten ready to positively impact their future. And there's also a provision in this bill, unlike universal public pre-K proposals, this addresses infants and toddlers that are critical. We must have care for those kids, not just our preschool kids. And for any provider to participate in this, other than obviously a mother or father, a parent, the other providers would have to have a certain ratio of infants and toddlers that they cared for. And that's to ensure that we have care across the board. As the incentives are there for programs to grow, increase slots, for new centers to open up, it will increase slots for every age group, which is crucial to our working families across the state. There is also a provision in this for kids with special needs. And those kids who are not, they're not going to be able to assess them due to their special needs. There is a provision that would automatically grant that funding to that provider. And the purpose of that is to incentivize these centers to provide care for kids with special needs. And so that is a big part of it also, and something that we really need to focus on. As far as the pilot project itself, there are a lot of things to be determined on this. We set up some provisions that UK will bring together a working group that will involve child care providers, kindergarten teachers, those that are expert in early childhood education, to come together and build the assessment tool, to build curriculum for the schools, and to make recommendations once this is over. The pilot project will stretch over different socioeconomic areas, different regions, and try to get a complete assessment when we're looking at child care providers, family home providers, and parents for that matter. And we will look over the period of time, and on that third year, rather than those getting their STARS assessment, they would get funding based on the kindergarten readiness of the students that they sent into kindergarten that particular year. And Madam Chair, that's a basic overall structure on this. And as far as I know, there is no other state that is doing this. There's performance-based incentives, obviously, as we do with Kentucky All-Stars, but I'm not aware of any state that bases funding on being child care ready. I feel like with the issues that we are facing as a state related to early childhood education, this covers every issue that we've talked about. It does not apply to our public pre-K programs like Head Start and to any program that would be funded through the school system, but it would apply if there are on-site child care centers that fall under the child care regs. So I'm a firm believer that we have to use all resources available if we're going to move the needle forward in our state and deal with this child care crisis and early childhood education crisis that we have. And I feel like this bill will at least allow us to assess the idea, to know if it is a viable idea, and then we can make a decision how to move forward with it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your leadership. I do have a few members who have signed up for questions, and we'll start with Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Carroll. Rather bold and innovative. Congratulations. I like it when we think outside the box. I'm probably most interested in how this applies to parents, single and married. Can you kind of work me through the logistics of it? I mean, will they have to register with this pilot program to be eligible? And
for the pilot program, they will identify the families and the centers and the providers that will be part of this project. And it's going to have to encompass enough numbers to make sure that we get a true reading out of it. But that's the plan. And the team that UK is assembling will work through these details. They are the experts. That's why we asked them to undertake this project, and to ensure that we get a broad scope of the validity of this idea.
And how will the parents get the resources they need? Would that be provided to them through the?
They would. And looking at programs like the HANDS program, those programs that go in home, and any other avenue that we have to provide them with the materials and basic instruction on what's required of them to get the kids kindergarten ready. And as far as the awards, we would not consider whether or not that child goes to a babysitter. But if a parent had the child within their care the 2 years previous, then they would be eligible for the entire award. If there are situations where at year 3 they're at home, year 4 they're in a center, then that would allow for a split award, and the cabinet would be given latitude to provide different portions of an award based on an individual child's situation. But the parent would be required to provide proof that they would be eligible for child care assistance, and then the centers would have to maintain all the records to ensure that they had care of the child the previous 2 years.
How many children do we envision being in the pilot?
Senator, I think that's largely going to depend on the funding, and we're at the early stages of that. There is $2 million I know that was in last budget that was set aside and not utilized. My goal is to submit a request for that $2 million to be used for this project, and I really feel like that would allow us to expand the scope of the project enough to get an accurate data analysis of the idea.
As far as that data you mentioned, I think that there's going to be a cross-section that looks at different socioeconomic factors to make sure we're not just looking at one group.
Exactly, and it is crucial with all three groups, because you look across the state in eastern Kentucky with the child care homes. Those are critical in those areas that don't have centers. So we have to make sure that those are properly assessed. But if you imagine that you're caring for a few kids in your home and three of them go into kindergarten, all three of them are ready, that's $6,000 additional dollars for your family's income, which might help you to maybe grow, maybe start your own center. So that's kind of the idea on that front, but we do have to focus on each mode of delivery and make sure we're maximizing each one as we move forward as a state.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Funky Fromeyer.
So innovative. Thank you for bringing this legislation forward. And Senator Meredith wore you out on 5 or 6 of the questions that were in my mind. And I did want to just take a point of privilege. I have 3 young ladies sitting directly behind you. You thought they were coming for you, but they're in fact excited and would be very supportive of this as well. A senior and 2 juniors in high school that are part of the early childhood program. So if you've got $2 million in the set aside, that would be about 10,000 kids. So the 10,000 maybe this year on a 1-year type of look back. And when I'm looking at the provisions, if the pilot can be so large, that's a good number of young people. Where I saw something in here about low income. So are families that may achieve this 2,000 any family, or do you have to qualify as a low income?
You would have to qualify, and you'd have to prove that you would be eligible for child care assistance. That's the threshold. But again, this is a pilot project, and I expect that there will be ideas that come along the way that are better than what I have. And met with a group of child care operators this morning. Several ideas came out of that. So I expect it's going to be an evolving process, but it's the basic concept, I think, that excites me the most, in that we're focusing, just like we do on post-secondary, we're focusing on success. And as a parent, and I know it's great, and I've told you all this before, my center was a 5-star center. I took great pride in that. It took several years to get that. But coming in and saying that 95% or 100% of our kids are kindergarten ready, as a parent, I like that. That tells me that's a quality center, and that's a place I want to be. And it's kindergarten readiness that tells the story in early childhood education, not a one-day assessment every 3 years.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, I do have one question, but it's going to take me a little bit to get there. But I will get there.
I'll take notes, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Carroll. Again, I think this is a great idea. And Senator Meredith, this is no less a step in the right direction than your Senate concurrent resolution number 9, which I've been very complimentary of you bringing. As everyone here on this committee dais knows, I've been a strong proponent of universal pre-K, very strong proponent. And obviously, this is a step in that direction, and I do applaud you for bringing this. Also, I realize we live in a very politically charged environment, but I'm in a political institution, so that doesn't frighten me as well. I'm pleased to see, Senator Carroll, that you talk about in Section 1, subsection 3. You talk about diverse types of early childhood education providers. I assume you're talking about that across some very neighborhood neighborhood diversity, racial diversity, language diversity. You talk about that. You talk about geographical diversity in 3D, which I think is very important. I'm a strong proponent in having diverse groups benefit from any type of political program or activity that takes place. So I like that a lot. Senator Carroll, I know how much you love your daughter. You talk about your daughter a lot, and I admire any father who takes interest in their children. I know when I had my 3 children, they were all young, back in the 80s. My wife and I put them in early child education, beginning at 3 years old. Okay, I know what benefit that gave to our 3 children, and by the time they got to kindergarten, they were ready to hit the ground running, and all of them succeeded. They all graduated from college because of that investment we made in early child education. And I would like to see every parent benefit from that. That's why I'm such a strong believer in universal pre-K, because I know what it did for my children. And then you talk about something else, and then I will ask my question. You talk about learning beginning at birth. There's no limit here on when this begins. And I think anyone who's serious about education, that's why I serve on the education committee, understands that really we're not really talking about pre-K through 20 or P through 20. Learning really begins at birth. And if we're going to do a state that does right by our children, we need to start that. And this is what this does. This is the first time I've seen any kind of policy that we're proposing to adopt that recognizes that learning for our children, I'm using that collectively, begins at birth. So I want to second your recognition of that and let you know I approve on it. My question really is that, am I understanding diversity correctly when you talk about having incentives to diverse types of early childhood education providers, geographically diverse Commonwealth areas, that we're talking about children from Eastern Kentucky, children from the urban areas of Lexington and Louisville, children who come from primarily black communities, children who come from the very, income limited, but to, again, language diversity, intellectual diversity, those kinds of that type of diversity. Is that what you have in mind when you talk about that in the bill?
Senator Thomas, the intent is to be as diverse in every area as we can. The experts at UK have done these studies similar to this before, and they will best know how to structure this program to get the most valid data out of it. But yes, the idea is to compare on different areas, different socioeconomic, on what the impact might be. So that is the goal. However, we have left some latitude to UK to make final decisions on that based on their expertise as we move forward. But this, if it comes to fruition, it will affect the whole state. So we do need to have a sampling throughout the state and to determine if it is a valid tool.
Do you have a thought? Senator Janine?
Thank you, Chair. Senator Carroll, thank you for bringing the bill. It is an out-of-the-box way of looking at trying to provide some of this preparation. And I admire you for looking at many different aspects of it. As I looked over the bill, the part that I kept struggling with a little bit was the direct payment to a parent that's taking care of their children at home. So I did have some fiscal note concerns with that. Number one, I come from a early elementary background myself as a former elementary principal, and I do appreciate Head Start and those programs that are out there that are servicing some of these folks. And if they're eligible for some of the federal funding already, they can use that funding to go to a daycare or to another program that's out there. When we open it up like this with a kind of an unknown, do you know how many 3 and 4 year olds in Kentucky are actually out there that would be involved in potentially being eligible for this?
It's been a few weeks since I looked at the numbers. I did run, looking at the number of 4-year-olds, and I'm not going to swear to this. I think it was maybe 50,000. And but you have to understand that those that go into public pre-K, they would not be part of this. That's a different funding mechanism under different regulations, so it would eliminate them. And I don't foresee any situation, and this question has come up a couple times, whereby a family would keep their kid out of Head Start for $2,000. That's just not. I don't think that's feasible to think that amount of money would justify 2 years of not having a kid in a public teaching facility. So I don't think that's an issue at all. And I think mainly we have such long waiting lists in so many of our centers, and even in our school districts, there's not enough space for all the kids who would be eligible. And and I know there's efforts to expand eligibility for public pre-K. And again, it's going to take every provider type, and we need to maximize every type of service that we have. But for those lower incomes that they don't have the availability, or they want to keep their kid at home, it's just the incentive to get that child ready for kindergarten. And that's worth something. That's an investment in that child. I don't care where that child is being taught. That's an investment that will pay off for all of us in the long run.
One more. So I agree with you. We definitely need expanded opportunities, for our students to be kindergarten ready, and that's I think that is a valid point that you make. Beyond let's take this just a step further, if you would, indulge me. If we say we put $2 million into this pilot program as a pilot program, would it not be a wise to have a framework in place to know whether or not we expand that on out in the years after that, and what that fiscal note would look like? Because $2 million now to get it started, what does that look like? If are we giving that money to all of these groups, or should we not just maybe make it eligible for those daycare centers to pilot that program to see if it's actually effective, and then from there expand it out? Because I see in the years going forward, it's not just a $2 million commitment. We're talking about millions potentially, and that could be, I don't know what that number is or what that would look like. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around, okay, what are we committing ourselves to with the pilot program? The outcomes, yes. The what it's needed for, yes. But what does that look like in a broader sense? Can you help me understand that?
Obviously with the pilot project, we're not committing to anything other than completing the pilot project and analyzing the data. And when this is over, then we as a legislature will take a look at that data, and we'll decide if the outcomes of that would justify opening this up throughout the entire state. If I ran the numbers in the beginning, and if you look at the number of 4-year-olds, and I believe that was 50,000. I was looking at the number that the governor's team put together for their proposal, and you look at a 50% kindergarten ready rate. I think that was somewhere around $65 million. If you assume that, however, that's not taking out the kids that would be in Head Start or in a public system. It would not. You'd have to deduct those numbers out. But that would be, if you assume those numbers, that would be roughly what the annual cost would be in investment. And I would say this, as far as investing in families, that's really kind of contrary to what I've heard over funding early childhood education in this legislature over the past 3, 4, 5 years. Is we have members that simply don't want to subsidize, in their words, not mine. It's an investment, not a subsidy, in private business. But and spreading this out, which is, I intently did this because that way we can allow a family that's not part of that system to participate in this also. We're making the investment in their child also and giving them the resources to get that child ready for kindergarten. And, it pays off in so many different ways. And where are we missing the boat in funding? We're investing everywhere else but this area. And I believe this will fill that gap that we so badly need at this point. And I believe the dividends will far outweigh the investment. Worst case scenario, if it were $60 million a year, the dividends would far outweigh that in workforce availability, attainment, and education, all the things that are so important to us that we invest in so heavily.
And that small subgroup that we're doing here in the initial pilot program, those that are eligible for the federal funding already, and do you foresee this kind of expanding to other say a middle class family that is doing all they can to get their child kindergarten ready too? Are they
at this point? I don't, and this wouldn't apply to anyone. They wouldn't be getting child care assistance. If they were getting that, they would be in a center.
Right.
So it doesn't apply. If they were in Head Start or in any public pre-K, that wouldn't apply to them.
So they have to be they have to be eligible for this funding to be able
they would have to be
also be eligible for the $2,000.
They would have to be eligible for. They would have to meet the metrics to be eligible for child care assistance.
Okay.
As far as their revenue, and if they applied, they would meet those metrics. Not that they have to apply; they don't. But it's simply an option. If they're not in child care, they're getting their child ready, and they're awarded for that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, is there a motion on the bill? So moved. Is there a second? Thank you. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Deneen.
I'll explain my vote. I had some consternations coming in on which way I was leaning in this, whether it was a pass to get me some more information. You've answered a lot of my questions and did so very well, and I appreciate that. And I still probably have some consternation about some of the cost and how we're structuring it a little bit, but I'm not going to let that prevent my vote from allowing this bill to go forward. So at this point, I will vote aye. But I would like to maybe meet with you and discuss some of the framework as we go forward and maybe reserve some opportunities for some corrections.
Senator Funky Fromeyer. Yes. Senator Girdler. Senator Herron. Senator Mays Bledsoe. Aye. Senator Meredith.
Explain my vote, Madam Chair, if I may. I'm a yes, a definite yes. Again, Senator, I commend you for this. I know you'll be successful. UK will be successful with this. What they won't be able to tell us from the study, though, is what we've achieved from the cost of doing nothing. We talk about social determinants of health all the time, about how that affects healthcare, and this certainly falls in this realm. And we say we don't have enough money for that. There's enough money to address social determinants of health if we spend money in the right area. So I really would be curious if some point in time, what's the downstream benefit going to be? And it will be tremendous. And me taking shares to realize that, but I think this is a good program, and I commend you for it. Thank you.
Senator Mills. Senator Thomas.
Madam Chair, I'd like to explain my aye vote.
Please proceed.
Thank you. As I've said throughout this year and in previous years, more than half the states in America right today, more than half the states have some form of universal pre-K. Okay, 5 of the 7 states that are contiguous to Kentucky now have some form of universal pre-K. Only Indiana and Tennessee do not. Okay, this program is certainly a step in that direction. It doesn't go as far as I would like, but it's certainly a good step in direction. And so I'm all for this. The point I don't think that should be lost on Senator Carroll's commentary about this program is his recognition that learning doesn't begin at 4 years old or at 3 years old, but that learning begins at birth. And as a society, I certainly want to do my part to push us to that understanding that education begins from the time the children leave the womb. And we need to continue to practice that and believe in that and invest in that, as Senator Curl used the word investment. So I'm all for this, Senator Curl. This will get my support today in committee. This will get my support on the floor.
Senator Webb, Senator Williams, Chairman Carroll.
Aye.
Thank you. Senate Bill 191 passes with favorable expression 7-0. Let me go wrap up. Thank you, Chairman, for your leadership on this. I remember that $2 million conversation several years ago about how to do something innovative that affected the state, and this is certainly that. So it's exciting. With that, our next meeting is Tuesday, February 24th at 8 a.m. Would anyone like to change or record their votes? Yes on Senate Bill 191. Thank you. With no further need, we stand adjourned.